Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is a very quick recording I'm putting together for you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time you're accessing this. The target group is Phil 417, the 400 level class for 2023, taking contemporary issues in philosophy and committed to engaging the content on reduce conceptual decolonization. I just want you to be minded. We are dealing with the full text, so we are referencing Kwesi Redu, the Ghanaian author, as part of our discussions for the second theme. So the first one engaged the themes on development, African conception, the notion of development itself, the various connotations that have been given to it. We have seen Todaro, Amartya Sen, and quite Lansana Keita and others, various perspectives, highlighting how we should conceive of development, its multifunctionality, its multifacetedness. A gradual process should affect the livelihoods of people. It shouldn't just be the economy. So GDPs and what have you may not necessarily define development. They may define growth, but not development. Yet there seems to be a certain connotation of growth, progress, advancement, whenever you talk of development and stuff like that, whether underdeveloped, developing, and developed nations are really, really clearly defined notions that are philosophically meaningful or not. Have as any nation finished developing and stuff like that. So the first team engaged those, and I think the presentations in class were good for those. I just thought that we should have something that you can refer to help you mop up nicely your discussion of the second theme, which was on the need for conceptual decolonization in African philosophy. So what does the text say? Our reference text is reduce conceptual decolonization, which you see projected there. So in the paragraph that begins, and I hope I'm able to do this as briefly as I can, because it is just to serve as a guide as you engage in your groups and you discuss amongst them to put together a good presentation. Redu tells you in the first paragraph, if you have read it and you should, as I project, that the sense of urgency that he believes should be attached to the need for what he called, the program he called a conceptual decolonization. For the word concept, decolonization, deactivate, decode. You know, when you hear there's a word that you hear the D preceding it, means negate whatever that thing is. So we have been colonized in a certain way, and it asks for a decolonizing, negating the colonization. You know, the thing has been coded, then we ask you to remove the code, so decode it so that we can access and stuff like that. Now he says conceptual. It means the decolonization is advocating for. It's not perhaps in our dressing or in the food we eat or stuff like that. We don't want the colonialist or the colonial regimes impacting how we dress and how we blah blah blah. That may be a consequence of what he's saying, but his emphasis is on how we are thinking about ideas, concepts, especially his emphasis on what a philosophical concept in the African perspective. Of course, when he advances, you will see that he thinks that the way he's approaching this matter will not just make it a relativist view that you are saying that we should go back to what we think is African and cut it off from the West. No, not necessarily that, but that he thinks that to make us any agenda for conceptual decolonization is worthwhile for every location on earth, every human society, every grouping must have that approach. Why? Because it will give us an independent field for accessing and interrogating and critiquing, you know, or engaging meaningful discussion in every continent, group, ethnicity. See that he's asking for an independent posture. Not that he's saying that therefore think only in terms of African conceptions, no. So it is not a relativist, but he wants you to be able to put on the coat of the Chinese, for example. If you are speaking the language of the Chinese, you must understand it the way the Chinese will. And if you, African as you are, move from the Chinese to even the European, and he uses a concept like love or like democracy or like family, the way the indigenous group whose language you are using understands the notion is how you should approach it. So that I could be Asante or Ga and engage Yoruba or Bantu language. The whole conceptual decolonization agenda is to tell whoever is engaging another's language that languages capture an entire conceptual framework, and therefore you cannot import the term as you use it and as you mean it into another. In fact, if you were to engage the language of a people closely, it can solve a lot of things, the philosophical challenges that look, for instance, interesting in Western thought, but are not really even meaningful if you were to bring it in Akan thinking, like he did in the text. See, so he looks at Descartes' certainty, for example. Descartes' searches for certainty. He says that if you say certain, I am certain about something, the Akan's language, which says minim pefe, and minim crojins, and that those are all there. So those who read it, I got 1 or 2 emails. Doc, can you help us with a little elaboration here and there so that it can guide our thoughts as we discuss? Okay, minim pefe, minim crojins, it does not suggest in the Akan thought, says Redu. If you looked at the language closely, that the person is speaking of absolute certainty that suggests infallibility, that means it is infallible. He says no, that's infallible. When I say minim pefe se or minim kroje se, which is a close interpretation of what one may be looking for when one says certainty, he says in the Akan thought, it just means I am convinced beyond reasonable doubt. I am convinced. How do you say? I'm convinced. I'm so convinced, which still allows for the possibility of error. It doesn't mean when I say meaning pepe, say, I mean in say, I mean I am absolutely certain to the point of it being infallible. He says that cannot be conceptualized in Akan thought. That thinking, so the whole mind, cogito ergo sum, that there is doubt about knowledge and therefore knowledge must be certainty, which looks so philosophically interesting if we engage Descartes as philosophers in Western thought, father of modern philosophy and whatever. He says, just bring it into the language of, say, the Akan, and you see that doesn't raise those problems. They are not philosophical problems at all if you ask the Akan, you see, because the Akan would not, from the language which captures the conceptual scheme, will not think of being convinced, meaning the pefe, doesn't think of that as meaning infallible. And so if there is the possibility of fallibility, even in knowing, then there is nothing like knowledge must be certain. That problem that initiated the whole discussion on, I think, therefore I am called to a soon, won't even come up. What then is the point? He even goes further with the thing on existence, to be, I think, therefore I am. That sounds okay in English language, what he calls the metropolitan language of the colonialists. Okay, really says it sounds okay to say I think, therefore I am, because I am makes meaning in maybe English, but translate that into Asante or Akan, which is his first point of call, of course. And he says you can do it in your own language, Yoruba, Bantu, whatever, German, what have you. I don't know about the European, but the African one, because that's his focus, you would see that it doesn't make sense to say I am. I am what? In the language of the Akan, I am must, it's just it precedes something. So I am at the church, sorry, Adriane, So if you are speaking, I am in the form of existence, to be, I am, you are, he is. It will not make sense in the Akan thought to say I am. It will require something else for this expression to be meaningful. And yet in English, because I'm able to say I am, it sounds as if then I have created the possibility of existence from just the statement I am. This is Ruedu's interrogation of the matter. And imagine how prominent Cartesian philosophy is to both, epistemology and somewhat metaphysics. Because from his knowledge of his own existence, Descartes is able to arrive at the existence of God, who is supposed to be the creator of the universe, or the creator, the one that sustains his knowledge, and from there to the knowledge of the external world and its existence. All the claimed linguistic, attributions that led Descartes to that, according to Reid, will not even arise at all. It will be unintelligible in account. And that's what these are just signals he's using to make a very prominent point that something then must be taken off the way the colonial language has affected our thinking, our thought frame. And so the emphasis is on the thought frame, and I'm still on paragraph 1, but I've gone all the way to the end, the 9-page paper we are looking at. And now we are going to walk through it for you to see what I have said in emphasis to help your reading when you want to look out for a further explanation on something in the text. Look at the screen. Reduce paragraph 1 just tells you how urgent it is, because if you were to think of democracy in the terms in which the colonialists, gave them to you, it might not resonate with the people's conceptual framework. That's the issue. It's not the term. Everybody may be practicing family, but when the Akan says family, and I say Akan because that's a reference point, you can look at it in your local, or indigenous is a better word, indigenous language. As an African, he's targeting African philosophy, African thinking, the African people's kind of colonialism that they have suffered. And for which reason there is an urgency. Look at the word here. There is an urgent need. It is not something you should be relaxed about. It's urgent need for what? Decolonizing in your conceptual frameworks. Okay. And so he says that think of family. That's a very basic one. When I say family, when I can say minia, or his family, or busheni, it includes cousins and cousins, but sometimes it's even just because we belong to the bushia called Anana or Nkona or this. That is ingrained. So if we say it's a family gathering, or marriage is a family thing, and you are thinking that it is a brother and a sister who have found themselves going to marry, and therefore 2 witnesses are enough to sign at court or whatever, you are confusing 2 conceptual frameworks. This is a problem. And so divorce cannot be, I'm not happy with the person, and I'm done. You look at the implications. Imagine me, and I told you in class, the city campuses I met directly, I told you, imagine you found 2 students making out in the car somewhere. You know how you people say it, I'm used to making out. If you want to say it in English, the guy and the sister are having sex in the car. You can say that, and it doesn't offend sensibilities easily. Say the same thing in Chi or Ga in front of your mother and your father. Say it as it is said in Chi or Ga and see if it is possible. You are forced to have to say it in a decorous, quote and unquote, manner because of how the language connotes so much. I cannot look at someone's wife and say, I'm a do. But if I said the same thing, me do means I love you. I could say it in English, and it might not connote so many things, like if I said it in a certain language. The frame, the conceptual framework is what is important. Peri justice. Look at the language. Awarijaye, living, stopping marriage. It's not the same as divorcing. Someone will say. Anyway, so let's go now to the specifics that he mentioned. I think that should be done in about the next 10 minutes or so. I wish I can do this in a very, very crisp manner, yet helping those who have asked for help. So the first paragraph just mentions the need for that. And then the second paragraph, if you read the whole thing there, see, I've done a lot of painting through it. He says, I have to explain what I mean by conceptual decolonization. It's twofold and they are complementary. They complement each other. Keep clicking on my screen, please, if you can. Okay. By conceptual decolonization, I mean two complementary things. They help each other. So the first one, he states it in the negative, what African thinkers, African philosophers must stop doing. You have to stop this immediately and with a sense of urgency. What is that? And so you can read that because we are sharing this on, we want to avoid, copyright issues, but you can see on my screen, avoiding and reversing. That's the first part of the conceptual, the first half of the coin, the head of the coin. We'll look at the tail shortly. Avoiding or reversing through a critical conceptual self-awareness. And I'm quoting now, I'm quoting Redu. You have to stop and avoid it. How? By doing a critical conceptual self-awareness. Don't ask anyone to do it for you. You have to be aware of yourself and stop. And where you have already started, reverse, go back. But do it critically, not a wholesale return or a wholesale stopping. Some of the things you have to use it, they are not yours, but they have come in and it is difficult to stop. So it has to be critically done. And it is a conceptual thing, not picking guns and chasing people. No. Conceptually reverse. What? Through what? Self-awareness. So it's not anything you have. You just be conscious of yourself that I'm saying this, but perhaps I'm saying it in the framework of the Westerner. I'm saying it in the framework of the English language. So if you go and say the people are behaving nonsensically, they will tell you, come and pacify the land for saying that. Meanwhile, you thought you were speaking in a conceptual framework that accepts such language. That cannot be accepted because of its implications within the conceptual frame for the Seda Asante or the Ga state or the Yoruba or something. So certain things can arise that was not intended, but that is what it means within that frame. And so have a self-awareness. Do it to help you avoid or reverse what the unexamined. Take note of the author's emphasis. He didn't say to self-awareness that will help you stop the assimilation of other thoughts. Why didn't we have other thoughts assimilated into our thoughts? If by critical self-examination, it works fine for us, that shouldn't be a problem. But it is the unexamined ones. You just take it without looking anywhere. You just imbibe it without looking at its functionality, its meaningfulness, its intelligibility, practically and conceptually for your indigenous group. That is what he's questioning. And so when you read it through and through, you will see what he's saying. He says that is in the thought of contemporary African philosophers, you and I, and then before. Yɛka asɛm baako yɛadwene no so gyina biribi asɛm no a woka no wɔ nkyerɛaseɛ wɔ biribi a woka no. So what I just said in Asante was, when he says that is in the thought of contemporary African philosophers, he's talking to you and I, who are philosophizing in contemporary times, after we have been wholesale, if you like, or to a large extent. If you look at the language I'm speaking with you now, it comes with its own baggage, its framework, its worldview. That is what you are learning or speaking an indigenous conceptual scheme concept in. I'm speaking English to help you understand non-party politicking in indigenous Africa. How will you grab a non-party system When your frame, as soon as you hear political party, the conceptual frame you are working with is the majoritarian one we have now. That's the framework that makes meaning to you when I talk multi-party or non-party democracy. He says you have to immediately come to a self-awareness that when we say party, political party or as a group, the thinking around that in the language you are speaking, so if it is Asante, it's not exactly the same as the majoritarian or if you like multi-party democracy kind of thinking. When we say democracy, that is how we are. Look at how we translate it. Say some, make I say some. Ododoa memo, plenty people's rule. It is difficult to grab that because for the Akan or for someone, if what you are calling, some may say is autocracy or whatever, maybe they are democracy, the rule of the people. The people chose a king, like England has chosen a king to rule them until he dies. The Queen, I think, did over 70 or so years. Listen, people, why would that not count as democracy? The people's rule, democracy. Why wouldn't it count as such? Must democracy necessarily be a multiplicity? It really touches on that. Those who have read it, now you see a multiplicity of parties. Look at the connotation of parties, majority, minority. You can say, or you want to say, we have so 50% plus one. Maybe says that's a joke in indigenous thinking. No. So he pleads for a non-party polity. Non-party. Which doesn't mean people don't disagree. They will disagree. Oh, let's do the bridge before the market because of so and so and so. Then the other elders say, no, we think we should do this one before that. That's a disagreement. But it's not a partyistic disagreement, which prevents people from even engaging critical examination of the matter. So far as it is this political party's position, whether Ghana or America or whatever. But America may work, Republican versus whatever, may work because the conceptual framework perhaps can sustain that even if it's not pleasant. Our conceptual frame as Africans is communal. People have strong ties to each other. Ebushia, this blood, suppose that whether it's a myth or reality, the people have that attraction and attachment to their sense of belonging together. And so if you come and have such, quote and unquote, a partyistic posture, it might lead us to the coups that as late as 2023 in this world. Look at how many coups in Ghana. Hey, apology. God forbid. In Africa now. I think the people don't know how to rule themselves. As in will be 7. But the point is, the thing has a frame. So you think you are talking the same democracy. The framework, that's what Redu is asking for. So the first part of conceptual decolonization, he talks on what we should stop doing, the negative side. Do not. That is why that's the negative side of his proposal. Stop imbibing wholesale unexamined assimilation of thoughts from what? The colonial rulers. That's the first part. On the other side, look still on the paragraph I'm referencing. Exploit, that one is positive. What you should do. The other one, what you should not do. That's why it's negative. This one, what you should do is what? Exploit as much as I'm quoting from here. Keep looking. Look here. This, yeah. Exploit as much as is judicious, not everything. In the indigenous, we are going there. He didn't say go and take everything in the indigenous in our thoughts, our thinking. We can reflectively revolve and evolve. So he says, exploit as much as is judicious the resources of our own indigenous conceptual schemes in our philosophical meditations on even the most technical problems, and I'm quoting now, okay, of contemporary philosophy, even technology. You will see why, take your time and analyze and critique, and you will see why grandma would have put charcoal into the palm nut soup the next morning when she was about warming it. Clean, washed charcoal. She will put it in the palm nut soup before putting it on the stove, whatever, the local stove, to warm it, because it currently now you can do the scientific diagnosis and see the component of the charcoal and what it does to prevent fermentation or whatever, the food going bad. There is some wisdom there, people. That is what Redu is trying to prompt. Don't even for technology. So what? So do not have an open arm receiving everything that came, especially because of the impact of language. The thing was said to you in language, which carries a whole reality along with it, and you have taken it wholesale. The thing may not, and in most cases, don't help us. They don't even make meaning. They are unintelligible. If you were doing philosophy, you're philosophically engaged in that. So stop that one. And then also the positive side of his conceptual decolonization is what? Embrace critically what is judicious in the indigenous. The two-way side is what I have helped you see. Now we can run. And then he goes on to show you that there are, this is so urgent because there are three ways, this is the third paragraph now, that the superimposition of colonialism has affected the African philosophical conceptualization. Keep the focus on the philosophy. Again, you know, the thinking is the thing is about a thinking pattern. Jechi has called it colonial mentality. I think it is here again. Look at Redu. I put that in green down here. Mental colonization. The thing is in the mind. And if they grab your mind, ask Paul of the Bible, he'll tell you. Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind. It is a change of mind that will bring you know, the transformation we seek. We want development of all forms. We discussed that. Growth of all forms. The thinking pattern must change. If you have cotton in Africa, if you have so much to eat in Africa, so much land available, arable land, and you still import food from other places that have snow and have different seasons that are even difficult to monitor. You have sunlight, you have shea butter, and you still import rice, tomatoes. My friend, it's a thinking thing. I always tell that when we did 3 or 4 social and political philosophy, I told students, those of us, even at Accra that is supposedly the industrialized part of Ghana, our own homeland, Ghana, drive from Kaswa to Central Region and see the land that is there. The land is just there, even on your pavement on campus. The cleaners and those who do our gardening. Look at the stress they go through. On pavement, cemented pavement, you will see tomatoes grow through it, through the cement. How can we be hungry? It's a mindset. The person doesn't want what he grew in their land. They want apple or something else, or the rice, because they don't want local rice. It's a thinking. If you are eating Kofi Brookman, it's funny. It's as if you are not catchy. Say, look at the heat. Now, Okobrania Botai. I should go to Gusu. I should sweater. You know, the shirt itself is hot. The person puts on a vest and adds what? A jacket. What you call suit. In a hot sun. Hey, Ofawata. You will bleh. And it is a thinking pattern. In the past, if you did any traditional wear for even an event, it looked like you were out of place. It's a colonial mentality. It doesn't mean you cannot do suit. If the weather is cold, why not? Sometimes even you want to look a certain way, it's a choice. But where it becomes a demand, that's your own. Look at the sun. You think God is not wise? You need colors that will take off the heat from your system. You are in black. The person who is wearing black and white and gray in a Western environment is because of the snow. The dress, the outfit, when they come to Ghana to visit us or to enjoy our beaches, do they wear suit? Look at what they wear. Your thing is a colonial mentality, people. And that's what real. Yeah, I know you are not included. Some people think it cuts across from our medicine to our educational system. I mean, you speak the local dialect that your child is brought up in at home, and it looks like you have to speak, hello, baby, take that thing for me. Go to any Chinese home or European home and go and find out if they are calling their children with tree or ga or fante. Really? They will not speak that. Not because they don't know it. Even if they know, they'll speak their language because the child's whole frame is inspired by that. And it is way to ask the linguistics folks, linguists, ask any thinker, even you and I, who say we'll be profiling ourselves, elephant for a go to a cross road dina, can knock down, say what? You see what I was just saying? Those who don't speak fancy, I was speaking. This is a fancy line, but full of English throughout because it's difficult to even say some of the things in fancy. Or constantly mixing it with English. It's a colonial mentality thing that affects how the child is conceptualized. And I said, if you really want to say the thing for it to drum into your child, you may be the type that speaks English here and there. But when you really, what I'm telling you, have you heard? If you say it and you're still moving, and Miss Asama you see all of a sudden you go back to the local, as if you would think that it is when you say it in the local language, the indigenous, forgive the local, the use of local, I mean the indigenous language, that is when the child will hear. Do you hear what I'm saying? That you use your local as if that one will enter properly. Because when you are speaking the English to the person, you suspect that he's still being recalcitrant. You want to say it in a way that they will hear with the tone, and the whole tone is enough to tell you what the person meant. To reduce emphasis is on what the three: language. You see on your screen the avenue of language, it says, which is the key one, and I've spent a lot of time on that, even though I went into how that affects a religion. Look down here, they are in red, and the politicking, and I've mentioned all that. Even the derivation of the existence of God, at least from Cartesian thinking, he feels is based on a locution of language, how you are speaking, which doesn't make sense if you brought it in our thing. So the next paragraph now takes the first problem he finds, which is what? The linguistic situation. This I refer to the language thing. So this paragraph, when you read it, most of the things I've said, you will see there. Okay. So he deals with language, and I've said enough, so I'll walk through it. Look at it. Conceptual idiosyncrasies embedded in the modes of our thoughts. I've said all those, giving you practical instances to connect with. Then he tells us, because our philosophical training, look, I'm here now. A philosophical training was in the medium of foreign languages. Even when we are referencing the same thing, what it carries, the intelligibility, is full of what? Something outside the framework. So it makes it difficult to practice democracy. It makes it difficult to understand family and work with it as we. So you are living something that you are thinking differently from. You are thinking one thing and living another. It is a misfit. And you know, it's a misfit. It will destroy us if we don't check. So that is why it's urgent. It will destroy everything. Look at the power of religion on you and I. Look at the power of politics on you and I. The politicking affects the economy, affects even whether you are giving birth to X or Y people. The life, the expectancy of people, what we discussed in development. Look at that. The options available to a person are all determined by a system that is running politics. And then the language. These embody everything around us. When God wanted to stop the people that were building supposedly to hate heaven, what did he change? The Tower of Babel in the Bible. What did he change? Language. Language. If two couples, a couple is living and people want to destroy that home, what do? They have to change the language. Simple. When I say change the language, it's not one is speaking English, one is speaking Jew. What it stands for. So the person says, I think that we should say, hey, don't come and order me around. Because the lady thinks, or the guy thinks, vice versa, thinks that he's saying something that means like he's taking the burden off you. Don't worry at all. If the person understands it differently, that is the home destroyed. Language, the power of language and what it stands for, the connotation of it. People, so there's urgency. And he tells you that even within the same, this second part, that's what Redu is saying here. Look on my screen from here. This side. He says that he doesn't have to belabor this point. Even if it wasn't a foreigner, a colonialist who imposed this superimposition, and it was internal to Accra, something that you were doing in the past. You can tell that it is not fitting, and so you throw away. Why should someone go back for it? That's what the point is making. Carrying other people's garbage. The thing is, they themselves have advanced. They are not doing some of the things we are doing now. They put some welfare systems in, some extra, super majoritarian something, all in the bid to close the gap, trying to find some level of consensus or consensual approach other than 50% plus one kind of politicking. They've stopped the past advancing. You have now gone for the baller and you are happy with it. When our approach to politicking in the past says redo, taken from that can was Kabima. You say some, I say that the elders will sit under the tree and talk and talk and talk. It's dialoguing. It's trying to make it our decision, not we are the majority, our decision, whether you like it or not. Go. No. So study this in tandem with some of the arguments that Jechi and others have made in their text. You can go back to the 304 that we did last semester. Social and political philosophy. The recordings are there. You can engage the content. Rule by consent. The people must consent to what you are doing. You can't impose. I don't want to use so many examples because we are in a political season in Ghana here, and sometimes people take things out of context. But we are academics. We have to cite things. You make a decision. I've added this. Everybody now 11. Then 2 minutes later, you make 2 steps back and reconsider. It is not good. It's not done in the traditional setting. Says redo. So he talks consensus approach there. Now all the things I said, the next paragraph now takes them one after the other. He says he's going to address language, and he looks at the metaphysical and epistemological concepts that were interesting. That like consciousness alone is the whole thing about philosophy of mind. In Western thought, consciousness, understanding consciousness, community, individuality is central to social and political philosophy. The whole philosophy, punishment, responsibility, free will, jurisprudence, philosophy of law, applied ethics. These concepts you see on the screen now, check here. I'm referencing here, just in case you're not watching. See, reason, self, ego. He says all these proposition statement, I am, is not meaningful. It's not a meaningful statement in metaphysics if you bring it to account conception. I said that earlier. So he would take them one after the other, and I think we've made some good progress. It's time to settle. See what I told you about when he says metropolitan language. If you speak about them in metropolitan language, the English or the French, depending on who colonized you, Portuguese, you would see that, very important point he makes in this paragraph here, also highlighted. I'm here now, this paragraph. He says the problem he finds with such thinking is that thinking about them, I'm quoting Redu now, in English almost inevitably becomes thinking in English about them. You thought you were thinking about those concepts, okay, in English. But before you know it, you will be thinking in English about those concepts. Think reflectively about what I've said. Now what dream is English, I dream a day dream. Meanwhile, now I would dream English. But I dream English. What I said in Chi was just another rendition of what I said in English. You may think that you are thinking about the concepts, but you're only doing it in English language. So as if you have an independent grounds thinking about those concepts. It's just you are using English language to think about them. But the challenge is that it tells us, before you know it, you are thinking in English about the concepts, which are also in English. You see, before you know it, your conceptual frame that is engaging those concepts are anglicized. Yeah? They are English. That is a problem. So when you bring it to an indigenous setting where we are now, you can't inherit from the queen or the king now. You can't inherit from there. This is where you have. Before you know it, you are all caught up in English understanding of Akan concepts. That's the point. So his point is, by virtue of this phenomena, as thinkers, contemporary thinkers, Koto, we are constantly in danger of involuntary mental de-Africanization. It is not voluntary, we don't choose it, but before we know it, we just keep on de-Africanizing our systems, de-Africanizing our education and occupation, the work we are doing. The mindset of Aban the government work versus my private work, comes from this, because the Aban thing emanated from colonialism. Fort, it has been, fortified, a fort. So if the thing is for those people, what kind of effort will you put inside when you go to work? You ask yourself. This is from Yechi. That is why look at private schools and government schools, generally speaking, maybe at least for Ghana. It should tell you the de-Africanization, the sense of ownership of the African thing is constantly eroding. It is being eroded. So the whole nation, and I'm referencing some of the discourses that have come on for the coup, hit nations in recent times. The nation doesn't have electricity. They produce the thing and it goes outside. I mean, imagine the people don't have it. Your children haven't eaten, not even curry and shito or something. So kids, they haven't eaten that, but you have prepared so much from your farmland that your people produced, and you have harvested all and put into a van, and it's going to the next, not even the next town, the next country. You are moving across to take it there. Which mentality would do that? Over to you. Okay, so Redu talks about that, and then I move on. The third, this paragraph, he tells you there's no pretense. It is not a matter of just changing the language. It's not vernacular to this thing. As soon as you change it from vernacular language, you stop speaking English and you speak Twi or Ga or Ewe, Nagode, no, then it means you have changed the conceptual scheme. That's the beginning of this paragraph. He says don't pretend that when we change from speaking English and we speak Twi, then the situation changes. No. He says it goes beyond that. It doesn't lead to instantaneous, look on your screen, philosophic revelation. No, sir. Because the thing is the scheme. Read that paragraph and see the point he makes. He's just asking you to be able to develop an independent grounds. Look, this is it. Of assessing that content. I said that in the introduction when I started. So I can be Fante and I may be engaging Yoruba or whatever. I should be able to consciously take off my Fante understanding of our marriage, for example, and or life after death, or free will, or reincarnation. If there is any Fante thinking around that. If I'm studying the Yoruba, I should consciously decolonize my thoughts because I'm now engaging Yoruba. So I should create an independent grounds to engage the Yoruba understanding. See that? The Yoruba understanding of, let's say that life after death. And study it. That is when I can be fair to the understanding that the Yoruba person has of the concept. He's asking for independent grounds. That's why it is not relativism he's advocating for. He's just saying treat the indigenous tradition that you are dealing with the respect it is entitled to, and an understanding of the concept within that conceptual scheme. And that should be possible even for a non-practicing person, if that person consciously takes off a garbage, not to come and look at what the African person is doing in the light of your Western thinking, or in the life of the other person, Chinese thinking, then you are using that to assess what the African or the Akan or Fanti Yoruba Bantu, person is doing. You will interpret some of the actions wrongly. Even Christianity, as practiced in Africa, compare that with the same Christianity practiced in Western. Before we give one testimony, the songs, the dancing moves, if you're not careful, you say this one is demonic. But it is because the people have a grooming, an attitude. The naming ceremonies, look at the people that will come, that our child has given birth. One woman who has given birth, that's about 30 mothers. My daughter has given birth, so we are going to do the naming. And that my daughter, as soon as this woman finishes saying my daughter, the next woman to say she's my daughter, the next person says she's even your graduation, the whole constituency of your hometown attends because their son is graduating. Their son, you have how many mothers and fathers? About 1,000. That is how they understand. They see you as a son, a child of the land. Imagine that in the political setting if you become an MP. You can imagine whether you are there for you and yourself or is for that is why the politicking must be done in a certain way. It's not all negative. These are not all negative, they are positive. That's why there is a framework that will hold you up in case you feel that Johnny Bravo has broken your heart. You have a whole web fabric of people. You are not so isolated that you consider suicide because some Johnny Bravo has left you. Then you go and drop yourself from a building and die and go. No, before you even start dropping from the building, someone will be calling in the morning. Hey, Natty say, where did he? Nana pay. It's a friend's, mother's, sister's, cousin. Communal setting has its advantage. That's real. You can read his other, the non-party politicking and see that. So back to this slide, an independent ground to help you transcend, move from how you see it to the other person see. So he says, I'm not adducing like a dependence on the peculiarities of a specific culture. Look at this. I'm referencing this for those who may want to read further to get it. See here, this paragraph. It says, it will be clear that the considerations adduced are not dependent on the peculiarities of the African language in question. You see that, quote and unquote. He's asking for an independent grounds of engaging. Okay, so now the same discussion, the earlier one was on the metaphysics, and he comes here. Here, he takes epistemological concepts, belief, opinion, certainty, doubt, knowledge. I told you. And he says Descartes, the whole interesting discussion on the meditations 1 and 2. Remember Descartes, I think, therefore I am, his systemic doubt. This one is philosophy, and for level 400, you should be well vexed in that form. All the way from level 100, philosophical problems till now, you should be able to remember very quickly what Descartes set off to do and what he was looking for. He was looking for certainty. And see Redu on page 140 now. I think we should do the page 139, which came later. Look, that's page 139. See what he says there. He said, Descartes' notion of certainty means the impossibility of error, infallibility. But that is not what Lacan means when he's looking for certainty. He's not looking for infallible. It doesn't make sense. Look, all this paragraph is meant to see meaning pefe. I said that earlier. See that? Page 139. Meaning pefe, meaning papa, meaning crojin. I very much know. That's what the person means. The person doesn't say he means what he has said is infallible, that it cannot be wrong, which is what Descartes was looking for. Okay, so he says the notion of certainty in English language is not what Lacan means. Lacan doesn't suggest certainty as an infallible. When he says it is set, he's certain, he means he knows very much. That's what they mean. See, Redu tells you up here, page 140 now. Look, any account I'm quoting now, any account will tell you, even at a pre-analytical level of discourse, that just because it is possible for me to go wrong does not follow that I can never go right. Okay? A popular adage says, if you look carefully, you find out. All these elaborating on the notion of infallibility. Infallible means you can't be wrong, which is what Descartes was looking for. He was looking for a knowledge that cannot be wrong. Redu says, knowledge, infallible? No. We will only say the person likes arguing, meaning the person otinjejifu, he likes debating matters, stretching matters until, of course, he or she gets a better justification. But not that it can never go wrong, certainty. So enough of that. And just a little point here to show you what I meant when he says he doesn't intend you to read his thing as a relativist thinking. That, look at it, he said the relevance of Akan language here is this, that in my opinion, any Akan who reflects on the matter from the standpoint of his or her own language is very unlikely to be drawn into that fallacy. Which fallacy is that? That if you say it is certain, it means it is infallible. He says no. This is true of, let's read it, whether in the medium of Akan, English, or Eskimo language, the same thing will apply. This is what I've said earlier. Just where the people's conceptual framework, when you are using their language, that's the emphasis. It's not asking that it must necessarily be Akan or the other. So a bit more on the reducing, the Descartes, and I really want to, and I have to attend to something else. Watch. He tells you Akan syntax or semantics cannot make meaning to the verb to be. Look at this. Woho. Wohi. That's the question you are. If you speak Akan, you know. I am, you are, he is. This woho, to be. So woho. This is how you may want to interpret exist. But existence demands, says Redu, in Akan thought, to say exists, woho, will ask for a location, a place, or wohin. Where is to be where? In Akan, you can't say to be and leave it. It doesn't make sense. In English, you can't. I am, you are, he is. The verb to be, yesui, tui, il, we are conjugating et. Yesui, tui, I am, you are, he is. In Akan language, generally, you can't say woho. Woho doesn't make sense. It has to have a locution. Baby kura or one must be included before it makes sense. If you are speaking woho to mean to exist. See, and this is the discussion going on here. Those who asked me, that is it. That is why if Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, here is that discussion. I think, therefore I am. And expect that this thinking suggests and conclusively arrives at his existence. He says, this one will not make sense in Akan thinking. If we were just engaging the resources of the language. It requires a special, take note, this will be transferred to even the existence of the universe and the creator of it. We do that analysis to that point of it. The universe is the location. Somewhere on earth, somewhere in the universe is where it will make sense to say I am. So I am in class. I am at the farm. Sorry. I am at church. You see, I am this. So the thing that makes existence meaningful is the location, where it is. Now, if you then ask the universe's existence, he says, where would the universe be located for it to make sense to say it exists? You see, so that it is presupposed that in Akan thought, you can't be asking about the existence of the universe because it is the location of the universe that is the universe that serves as a location for the existence of other things. So if you ask, where is the existence of the universe? That becomes unintelligible in Akan thinking. If it is where is the existence of Nancy, then I'll say I am at home. It is at home. At home is part of the universe. That makes my existence meaningful. This is what he's saying there. Very technical, and yet if you engage it systematically like I'm doing with you, you should be able to grab what he's saying. So now it doesn't make sense to ask about the existence of the universe because the universe will need to be located somewhere. And all locations are in the universe. So It's like the causal argument of the existence of, if God is the ultimate cause of all things, then what caused the cause of all things? You are philosophers, so you know the question of causality. That challenge will happen. And so he says that the resources of Akan language doesn't allow you, it doesn't even make meaning if you are very critical and you are looking at it, to ask of the existence of the universe. What I've said is here on his page. Where is it? I find it. I think it's page 141. Look at giving the quoting. See from here. If you read it, you should see. It says that it is unintelligible. It's questioning the intelligibility. Look here, of such a claim in Akan language. But we have imbibed it, and Akan philosophers are all busily engaging the cogito ergo sum, either criticizing it or trying to say that we don't say I think, therefore I am. We say I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. And others think that no, it's a moderate communitarian, and others, it says the whole language around it is what you should look at. Decolonize the language. That problem may not even exist intelligibly in our conceptions. Okay. And to show why it is an African thing, you can check. You will see that he references Kigami and others. Please, the location thing is also here. See this paragraph. To have a location is to be in the universe. This is what I was saying. Good. Therefore, if to exist means to be at some location, then to think of the existence of the universe is to double in sheer bubble. You are speaking rubbish. Oh, can't quite you quote and unquote. If you are speaking the nonsensible in the account thought, if you were asking for the location of things, the location of the universe, because the universe is the location of it. This is what I was talking about. You can find that paragraph. Okay, more drastically. So he goes on and on and on with some more examples, just showing how when you take the discourse from the metropolitan language from the colonizers' language, either English or French or what have you, and bring it into the specific indigenous language, it either renders it unintelligible or the problem disappears. And he's looking at the philosophical ones. Okay, I think that we can move on. And so from here going, he touches on the implications also on even the idea of the conception of God, so that it means how the notion of God is conceived will vary. The Akan will have an understanding of a universal being, an ultimate source, but not the way the Christian will think of God. He feels it is either ill-advised or it is a matter of that thing that we say, oh, it's a matter of faith. I say some a lot, a matter of faith. So you jump and leap to assume that. He thinks that God, then the supreme being, as conceived by them, take note. See, let me show you. This is it. So that you don't go telling him that he doesn't believe in God. He might believe in God, conceptualized in a certain way. Okay. As conceived by them. Is referencing the Akans believe traditionally that the existence of the supreme being as they conceive of it. So there is a conception of the supreme being, but not as taught or rendered in Christian doctrine, which you can see traces of in Descartes, omnipotent, omniscient, what have you. See the various arguments made for the existence of God in Western, the ontological one, the cosmological one. We'll see them in this course sometime later. Okay. They are all supposed to be appealing to reason, okay, to encounter a God that revealed himself to us. Now, the challenge, okay, let's take that one where we engage the discussions on the argument for the existence of God. So here again, Ubin Chirakwadanyam is prominent here. Okay, all on the religion. And then the last paragraph, you see that he didn't spend too much time on the religion and the politics because they are all inside an understanding of the language one. Okay, so he says we have been, look at our political tutelage has led to the kind of politicking we have now. Some even interpreted the indigenous as a one-party democracy. He says that one day it should never come back. One party is never the posture of the indigenous setting. You shouldn't say that because there was only one king for a long time, it meant that you should have a replica in running a one-party democracy. He says, no, 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 no. But the multi-party too is not something he's advocating for. Let's see where he says, may the former never return to Africa, referencing the one-party democracy. Perhaps some proponents, and I'm quoting Redu now, and practitioners of the one-party system confuse the one-party with the non-party concept. May the former never return to Africa. He's vehemently opposed to a one-party system. That should tell you that if you don't understand what he's saying, don't misrepresent it. He's not asking us to go back for a system that is, monolithic, if you like, or one-party stick. He's asking for a non-party conceptualization. He makes a plea for that in another paper I'm sure you're familiar with. His plea for a non-party. What is that? I said some of those in my introduction. An entrenched minority versus majority. That doesn't critically even engage anything because they belong here, they must defend it wholesale. No. We can disagree on the subject matter and vote then and deliberate. The posture must be one that is seeking true representation. Look, on my screen is there. Consensus. Must of necessity. See that? The thing must be of necessity. Read and find them out. The thing must have a consensus-oriented standpoint. I'm trying to look out for my brother's view, even if we disagree. What is it that he is communicating that I may come halfway for, if it is possible, or I may work at convincing him or her to see it my way? It's not if you don't like, you can go kind of posture. No, that is non-indigenous. It is not part of our indigenous system that he's asking us for. And it is not definitely not a majoritarian thing or a multiplicity. It should be plenty. No, and so on and so forth. You read it and find his issues. Then he tells you, my own hope, and I think I'm done now, is that if this program, which program, Conceptual Decolonization program, is well enough and soon enough implemented, that is where some of you may want to raise critiques. How practical can it be? And how soon, given our heavily, colonized mentality? Are we now going to start speaking P at home, or Ga, or Fanti, or Africa, an African language? Which one will we choose? Who is ready to let go? And I mean, living in Ghana alone, are we going to make a Kan language say the one that we all want to identify as common national language of communication, of engage? Even now that we had some few, 9 or so of them written and working with, look at the challenges. People will prefer the colonizers' language to any other local one or any other indigenous one if it is not theirs. That is the hard fact. Okay, and then others might also say we are going backward and we should look forward. And what about international communication? But just before you give up, I ask you, which Chinese or which German prime minister or chancellor or president, Russia, will come and speak your Chi at United Nations? You should also go with your Chi and let or your Ga or Ever Hausa, and let there be a translator for that. The language will develop, not just grow or be used. I hope that these few words, which ended up being almost an hour, still okay because it wasn't a full hour, will be useful to the many of you, and you will be able to give an account of yourself when you are asked to. Bring your questions to class. Main campus after coming week's national identity discourse, the Kofi Anyi the whole paper with my colleague. We meet the week after to engage on the rest of the content. City Campus, God willing, you can find this resource as an addition to the discussion we had, and then you would move on to the national identity. All groups come prepared with your presentations like we do always. This is Dr. Nancy Miles, Bafo Jimfi, and I addressed my Phil 417 class for the 2023 academic year. All the best and take care.